Test. Okay. Hi there. Welcome once again to another edition of Upper Room Ministries Sunday School. So glad again that you've joined us. Today we are concluding the book of Esther. If you were with us in our last edition, Esther, with God beside her, revealed herself to be Jewish to her king, as well as exposing the plot Haman had to eliminate her people. As a result, the king ordered Haman to be hanged from the gallows that he had built to hang Mordecai. That came at the conclusion of chapter 7. So now we shall begin in chapter 8. On that day, King Ahasuerus gave Queen Esther the house of Haman, the enemy of the Jews, and Mordecai came before the king, for Esther had told how he was related to her. Remember, Mordecai was Esther's older cousin, who raised her as his own child. So the king took off his signet ring, which he had taken from Haman, and gave it to Mordecai, and Esther appointed Mordecai over the house of Haman. All right, let's go back to chapter 6. This is after Haman had been utterly humiliated by parading Mordecai around on a horse, with Mordecai wearing royal robes, and everybody looking upon Mordecai as he were royalty. And chapter 6, verse 12, afterward Mordecai came back to the king's gate, but Haman hurried to his house mourning with his head covered. When Haman told his wife Zeresh and all his friends everything that had happened to him, his wise men and his wife Zeresh said to him, "If Mordecai, before whom you have begun to fall, is of Jewish descent, you will not prevail against him, but surely fall before him." That was a prophetic declaration. And here in chapter 8, we are seeing that declaration coming to pass as Esther is appointing Mordecai over the estate of Haman. What was once Haman's now belongs to Mordecai. Verse 3. Now Esther spoke again to the king, fell down at his feet, and implored him with tears to counteract the evil of Haman the Agagite, and the scheme which he had devised against the Jews. And the king held out the golden scepter toward Esther. So Esther arose and stood before the king, and said, "If it pleases the king, and if I have found favor in his sight, and the thing seems to be right to the king, and I am pleasing in his eyes, let it be written to revoke the letters devised by Haman, the son of Hammedatha the Agagite, which he wrote to annihilate the Jews who are in all the king's provinces. For how can I endure to see the evil that will come to my people, or how can I endure to see the destruction of my countrymen?" Okay, now remember, earlier in the book, the king held Haman in high esteem, and Haman used this favor to have a decree declared over Mordecai's people, the Jews, that they all be eliminated within the boundaries of the Media-Persian Empire, which the king happily gave the authority to do so. So, even though Haman is now dead, that order in which he gave is still out there, and there is still a time planned for the Gentiles to annihilate the Jewish people. This has to be fixed, and so it has to be broadcast that this must not go forward. So verse 7, Then King Ahasuerus said to Queen Esther and Mordecai the Jew, Indeed, I have given Esther the house of Haman, and they have hanged him on the gallows because he tried to lay his hand on the Jews. You yourselves write a decree concerning the Jews as you please, in the king's name, and seal it with the king's signet ring. For whatever is written in the king's name and sealed with the king's signet ring, no one can revoke. Well, nobody except the king himself. Because as you'll recall, Haman used the signet ring on those decrees to have the Jews killed in the first place. All right. Verse 9. So the king's scribes were called at that time in the 3rd month, which is the month of Sivan. That would be a period of time through the months of May and June. On the 23rd day of Sivan, and it was written according to all that Mordecai commanded, to the Jews, the satraps, the governors, and the princes of the provinces from India to Ethiopia, 127 provinces in all. To every province in its own script, to every people in their own language, and to their Jews in their own script and language. Now, you catching this? This kingdom, this empire, encompasses a number of countries and a number of peoples and a number of languages. Okay, this is a far-reaching empire the Medo-Persians had. Verse 10, And he wrote it in the name of King Ahasuerus, sealed it with the king's signet ring, and sent letters by couriers on horseback, riding on royal horses bred from swift steeds. By these letters the king permitted the Jews who were in every city to gather together and protect their lives, to destroy, kill, and annihilate all the forces of any people or province that would assault them, both little children and women, and to plunder their possessions. All right? So the Jews are now becoming aware that the decree against them has been revoked, and now they have the right to assault anybody who, at the very least, might be planning to have them eliminated. And by killing them, that includes both little children and women. Which is very similar, which is exactly similar to the command the God of Israel gave Saul when it came to the Amalekites. Wipe them out, including the women and the children, even the infants. All right. Okay. Verse 12. On one day in all the provinces of King Ahasuerus, on the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month of Adar. Yeah. That was when the strike against the Jews was supposed to take place. Okay. 13. A copy of the document was to be issued as a decree in every province and published for all people, so that the Jews would be ready on that day to avenge themselves on their enemies. The couriers who rode on royal horses went out, hastened, and pressed on by the king's command, and the decree was issued in Shushan the citadel. So Mordecai went out from the presence of the king in royal apparel of blue and white, with a great crown of gold and a garment of fine linen and purple. And the city of Shushan rejoiced and was glad. The Jews had light and gladness, joy and honor, and in every province and city, wherever the king's command and decree came, the Jews had joy and gladness, a feast and a holiday. Yes, it's a time to celebrate. Don't let anybody ever tell you that God does not want his people to have fun. No, on the contrary, God is a God of celebration. Yes, festivities. All right. And then many of the people of the land became Jews because fear of the Jews fell upon them. They became Jews. Now, obviously, that doesn't mean they somehow change their bloodlines. Obviously that can't happen. But this is simply a matter of acknowledging the God of Israel as their God. Turning their back on all false gods and taking up the Mosaic law. Most likely, the men had to be circumcised too, because the fear of the Jews fell upon them. Now that, again, this is just a work of God. This is a work of God intervening on behalf of the Jewish people. The fear of God fear of the Jews fell upon them. How did it fall on them? Where did it come from? I believe that came from God himself. Because, I got to think that there would be action, and that there would be some who would want to kill the Jews anyway out of spite, out of this reversal of fortune. But that didn't happen. No, instead they became Jews. Yeah, that kind of conversion is just something that doesn't really happen without God being at work. It just doesn't. It's like when somebody becomes convicted of their own sin and then cries out to Jesus to save them. That's a conviction that only can come from the Spirit of God. There are no words we can say that can bring conviction upon somebody. There's nothing we can do to bring conviction on somebody. It's only by the Spirit of God that that's possible. And I believe that's what's happening here. All right. Chapter 9. Now in the 12th month, that is the month of Adar, which takes place during in wintertime, around February and March. On the 13th day, the time came for the king's command and his decree to be executed. On the day that the enemies of the Jews had hoped to overpower them, the opposite occurred, in that the Jews themselves overpowered those who hated them. Yes. When God is on their side, the Jews can overpower anybody. When God is against them, anybody can overcome them. That's how it's always been throughout the Old Testament. Okay, so the fact that the Jews were able to overpower them shows that God is on their side here. Okay, the Jews gathered together in their cities throughout all the provinces of King Ahasuerus to lay hands on those who sought their harm, and no one could withstand them and no one could withstand them because fear of them fell upon all people. And all of the officials of the provinces, the satraps, the governors, and all those doing the king's work helped the Jews because the fear of Mordecai fell upon them. And this fear is just falling on every Gentile, everybody. There are no exceptions to the rule. So again, this is God at work. Yeah, even though God's name is not mentioned anywhere in the book of Esther, God is totally at work throughout this story. All right. Okay, verse 4. For Mordecai was great in the king's palace, and his fame spread throughout all the provinces. For this man Mordecai became increasingly prominent, Thus the Jews defeated all their enemies with the stroke of the sword, with slaughter and destruction, and did what they pleased with those who hated them. And in Shushan, the citadel, the Jews killed and destroyed 500 men. Also, Parshandatha, Dalphon, Aspatha, Paratha, Adalai, Aridatha, Parmashta, Aresai, Aridai, and Vajazatha. Oh, you gotta love Old Testament names. Oh my goodness. The 10 sons of Haman, the son of Hamadatha, the enemy of the Jews, they killed, but they did not lay a hand on the plunder. Yeah, even though the king had a right to, they didn't. The king gave them the right. They did not lay a hand on the plunder. Again, which you go back to God's original command to Saul. Wipe out everything, man, woman, child, infant, including livestock, and don't keep anything of theirs for yourself. I mean, they are fulfilling what Saul failed to do. They're wiping out like the remainder of the Amalekites here, and in keeping with the command, not touching any of the Amalekite possessions, even though the king told them they could. They realize that they answer to a higher king, a higher authority. All right, verse 11. On that day, the number of those who were killed in Shushan, the citadel, was brought to the king. And the king said to Queen Esther, "The Jews have killed and destroyed 500 men in Shushan, the citadel, and the 10 sons of Haman. What have they done in the rest of the king's provinces? Now, what is your petition? It shall be granted to you. Or what is your further request? It shall be done." Then Esther said, "If it pleases the king, let it be granted to the Jews who are in Shushan to do again tomorrow according to today's decree, and let Haman's 10 sons be hanged on the gallows." So the king commanded this to be done. The decree was issued in Shushan, and they hanged Haman's 10 sons. And the Jews who were in Shushan gathered together again on the 14th day of the month of Adar, and killed 300 men at Shushan, but they did not lay a hand on the plunder. The remainder of the Jews in the king's provinces gathered together and protected their lives, had rest from their enemies, and killed 75,000 of their enemies, but they did not lay a hand on the plunder. This was on the 13th day of the month of Adar, and on the 14th of the month they rested, and made it a day of feasting and gladness. Verse 18. But the Jews who were at Shushan assembled together on the 13th day, as well as on the 14th, and on the 15th of the month they rested, and made it a day of fasting and gladness. Now, you'll notice that taking a day of rest is becoming common here. Yeah, it's just they all have an understanding of the importance of rest, and rest is something God commanded them to do. All right, and even when a whole lot of stuff is happening, even when the nation of Israel was at war, they always took a day of rest every week. They honored the Sabbath, and they trusted God to protect them while they rested. It's an act of obedience and an act of faith in God's protection. All right, verse 19. Therefore the Jews of the villages who dwelt with unwalled towns celebrated the 14th day of the month of Adar with gladness and feasting as a holiday, sending presents to one another. And Mordecai wrote these things and sent letters to all the Jews, near and far, who were in the provinces of King Ahasuerus, to establish among them that they should celebrate yearly the 14th and 15th days of the month of Adar, as the days on which the Jews had rest from their enemies, as the month which was turned from sorrow to joy for them, and from mourning to a holiday, that they should make for them days of feasting and joy, sending presents to one another and gifts to the poor. Sounds a lot like Christmas, doesn't it? Yeah, it does. So the Jews accepted the custom which they had begun, as Mordecai had written to them, because Haman, the son of Hammedatha the Agagite, the enemy of all Jews, had plotted against the Jews to annihilate them, and had cast pur, that's P-U-R, pur, that is the lot, to consume them and destroy them. But when Esther came before the king, he commanded by letter that this wicked plot which Haman had devised against the Jews should return on his own head, and that he and his sons should be hanged on the gallows. So they called these days Purim, after the name Pur. Yes, this is what this holiday is called, Purim. And it is a holiday that is celebrated to this day within by the nation of Israel and all of its descendants throughout the world. Purim. Yeah, and it is a time of exchanging presents and giving to the poor. And a rabbi friend of mine once described Purim as, the Jewish version of Halloween, because everybody gets all dressed up in costumes. I'm not sure if that's outlined here in the book of Esther, but that's what happens today. It's remarkable to me that that Hanukkah, which is not found within the Bible, it's a holiday that's entirely man-made, would be more well known than Purim, which is in the Bible. Which is. Of course, in all fairness, this is something that was birthed out of custom, out of tradition, as opposed to, you go back to the book of Leviticus, where there are specific holidays that God himself ordains within the Mosaic Law. All right? So if you want to call this biblical, it can be called that. If you want to call it man-made, I suppose it could be called that too, even though it's in the Bible. And it all depends on your own perspective here. Okay. Therefore, because of all the words of this letter, what they had seen concerning this matter and what happened to them, the Jews established and imposed it upon themselves and their descendants and all who would join them, that without fail they should celebrate these 2 days every year, according to the written instructions and according to the prescribed time, that these days should be remembered and kept throughout every generation, every family, every province, and every city, that these days of Purim should not fail to be observed among the Jews, and that the memory of them should not perish among the descendants. It's all about remembering what God did for them during this period of time. It's why God established Passover. It's so that the Jews will remember the escape from Israel. Okay, verse 29. Then Queen Esther, the daughter of Abihail, with Mordecai the Jew, wrote with full authority to confirm the second letter about Purim. And Mordecai sent letters to all the Jews, to the 127 provinces of the king of Ahasuerus, with words of peace and truth, to confirm these days of Purim, at their appointed time, as Mordecai the Jew and Queen Esther had prescribed for them, as they had decreed for themselves and their descendants concerning matters of their fasting and lamenting. So the decree of Esther confirmed these matters of Purim, and it was written in the book. All right. Chapter 10, final chapter. And King Ahasuerus imposed tribute on the land and on the islands of the sea. Now all the acts of his power and his might, and the account of the greatness of Mordecai, to which the king advanced him, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Media and Persia? For Mordecai the Jew was second to King Ahasuerus, and was great among the Jews, and well received by the multitude of his brethren, seeking the good of his people, and speaking peace to all his countrymen. Now, yes, yeah, whoever, I think of, I believe Jesus said, whoever is first shall be last, whoever is last shall be first. You know, the exalted will be humbled, and the humble will be exalted. Haman was exalted and then was humbled. Mordecai was first humbled. Remember, he was in sackcloth and ashes, grieving, and now he is so exalted. Okay, these are just simply the truths of God being played out in real life. All right, well, that concludes the book of Esther. Thank you so much. Join us next time when we shall begin a new book. Until then.